Today I'm going to show you how I decorated this wine and cheesecake. Come join me. So this cake is a 3-layer chocolate cake that is semi-naked. I started a few days in advance shaping a fondant wine bottle. So here I am shaping it, I'm rolling it and using my hands just to shape this into a bottle of wine. I did my best to really just eyeball it and shape it into what I thought it would look like best as a wine bottle shape. After this sat several days, I then stood it up, put a skewer down the center. Here I am creating a wooden plate, so I'm using some fondant. I used an impression mat to make it look like a wooden plate, and I'm cutting slats of wooden fondant, fondant that looks like wood, cut it into a circle, and then I'm going to cut some small tiny pieces that are going to go around the edge so it looks like there's a lip around the edge of the plate. I'm using a little bit of water here to secure those pieces of fondant to each other. And there you have it. That is my wooden cheese plate. Now moving on, I'm making some crackers. I'm making some, you'll see me making some pieces of pepperoni. You'll also see me making a cheese wedge, 2 cheese wedges. Here I'm making the crackers, so I'm rolling it out and then I'm using some small, here's a piece of cheese wedge, but I'm using some small cookie cutters to cut out the shape of some crackers. This is crackers here. Then I'll use some paint and I will paint these in a little bit. Here's what they look like now. I'm putting little holes in them to make it look like crackers. Just trying to make it as realistic as possible. So I have 2 pieces of cheese wedges and then 3 crackers, 3 pieces of pepperoni. I have the cheese plate there, and then I have the wine bottle. You'll notice right now the wine bottle is flat on the bottom. It will not be ultimately, but I needed it to set a bit the way it is right here, and then ultimately it will be round the whole way around. Here I am painting these pieces of pepperoni and also the cheese wedges and the crackers so that they're more realistic looking. I'm using luster dust and some vodka here to paint the different pieces. Here I am rolling out some grapes. And I do have this sped up, obviously. So in the center, I'm going to use a piece of brown fondant just so I don't have to have as many grapes. But then around that piece of brown fondant, I'm going to surround it with these grapes. And then I'll also put some stems in the center. I'm going to make more than 1 bushel. Here I am making some grape leaves that will also go on the cake. As I mentioned, this is the piece of brown fondant I said about, and I'm just going to put these grapes all around it to cover that up so that you can't see it at all, and you'll only see the bushels of grapes. So I'm going to have 1 larger bushel and 1 smaller bushel of grape. I'm using some piping gel to adhere them to that piece of brown fondant. Then after I have them all on to that piece of fondant, I'll do this one and then the smaller bushel, and then you'll see me put in stems into the top of these bunches of grapes. Then after these are finished, I put these aside for several days so that they can dry fully before putting them onto the cake the day the cake is due. well, the day before it's due, I actually have the cake fully completed. And I just now put one, and there's the other stem. So they both have stems at this point. Now I'm moving on to, this is some wine bottle labels that I'm going to put onto that wine bottle now that it's completed. As I mentioned, I do have a skewer now down the center of this bottle so that it is more sturdy, because it will stand on the cake board beside the cake. Here I am doing a darker piece of fondant that's going to go along the top of the bottle, that foil piece that's on a thing of wine, as you can see right here. So I'm wrapping that around, and I'm going to cut off the excess. And then I'm going to put a strip to clean that up around the edge of that piece. And I'm just going to cut off the excess from wrapping it around. And then that's complete. So now I'm using some Crisco to just clean off all that excess powdered sugar, and then I'm going to use a paper towel and just kind of wipe all of that off, and then we will have almost complete the wine bottle almost completed. Here I am putting the label on both the front, and then I'll put one on the back, and then you'll see what this wine bottle looks like completed. I think it's a pretty good depiction. There's a little bit of shape issue, but I think for the most part it's pretty decent. And here is that wine bottle completed. There you go. As you see, a little bit of shape issue, but for the most part, I think it's pretty good. And now I'm using that Crisco again just to clean up all the rest of the pieces, getting the excess powdered sugar off. So clean it off the grapes. Moving on to all the other pieces, cleaning it off the first cheese wedge. And the crackers, the other cheese wedge, the piece of pepperoni, and the cheese plate. And also the grape leaves. Now I'm using some buttercream. I'm putting it onto the cake board so my cake doesn't move around as I'm decorating. And I'm going to stack the cake. So I'm going to put some icing between the cake layers. And I'm going to crumb coat this cake. Now this is a semi-naked cake, so I'm only going to be putting one layer of icing onto this cake. You will be able to see the cake through the icing, and that is what this customer wanted. So yeah, it's not going to be a fully covered cake. So once I have this basically crumb coated, I'll begin to assemble the decorations onto and around this cake. I have an extra big board. It's a 6-inch cake and a 10-inch board, so lots of extra space around it so that I can put these extra elements around the sides and top of the cake. So I'm using my bench scraper to smooth out the sides of this cake. And I'm also going to clean up the top of the cake to make sure that it's nice and crisp along the top, as you can see here. And I'm adding some more icing just to make sure that I have this nice and cleaned up. I want to make sure that it's mostly covered. I'm using a little bit of buttercream, and I'm going to use that to attach this to the side And I'm cleaning up any excess buttercream that was sticking out over the top. Now I'm just going to put the different pieces along the cake. You'll see me moving stuff around as I find where things fit best, in my opinion. So I added some grape leaves to the top. Going to adhere that plate to the top. That's where I'll keep that. Gonna put my bushels of grapes on the sides. Gonna put obviously the things on the cheese plate. And I'm going to use that buttercream to adhere those all to the places where I want them to sit. And adding some of those grape leaves periodically throughout on the back, on the cake board, and actually on the back of the cake, on the cake board in the front of the cake. Definitely around the bushels of grapes, since they are grape leaves. Then I'm also going to take some green buttercream and I'm going to put some vines about to make them look a little bit more realistic. Here I am attaching those different elements to the plate on top. And here are those vines. And with that, we are basically finished with the cake. We're just kind of cleaning things up and finalizing where things are going to be placed. And this is what the cake looks like once it's finished. If you enjoyed watching this video, I would love if you would subscribe to my channel, and that way you don't miss any future content. And I would also love if you would like, comment, and share with other people that you think might enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Any engagement helps my channel. Thank you so much for joining. Please come again.